Happy Friday, guys. And would you like to see the cholesterol LDL hypothesis utterly destroyed? Well, you came to the right place. This is an amazing session in Metabolic Duo, so you can go to metabolicduo.com. Myself and Gabor Erdoshi host guests and go through all the best in nutritional and health science. But we got Professor Vladimir Subbotin back. I interviewed him in 2019 in CrossFit headquarters on the West Coast, and amazing papers he's published, and he literally takes apart the cholesterol or LDL hypothesis. So don't mind Dayspring or Atia or all the cholesterol lipidology fanatics. This absolutely destroys it. And just one quick thing before you watch the session is a morphological fact. So our arteries, our coronary arteries, the intima or the inner layer of the arteries is around 30 cells thick, and LDL can't go through it. But the orthodoxy, the lipidology people, the cholesterol fanatics, they all maintain imagery that it's only a single cell layer and the LDL can invade it. So the early part of our conversation with Professor Subbotin, we go through that. I just wanted to give you a heads up, and you'll see the diagrams on the screen, and then Professor Subbotin goes ahead to absolutely macerate the rest of the cholesterol nonsense. So this is a great one, guys. Stick with it. Amazingly revealing. Vladimir, long time no see.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay, yes, I can hear you. Yeah, you're in the kitchen, are you?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a living place. Living place.
Indeed. Perfect. Of course, there's another Vladimir who's not too popular the last few years in America.
Well, yeah, he never was popular, but unfortunately he made his way.
Yeah, myself and Gabor just laugh at geopolitics. Pretty much. You have to just laugh these days at the madness going on. But you know what? I actually have behind me, I'll get out of the way and the camera will focus.
Yeah.
You remember?
Yeah, it was a great time. It was great time.
Yeah, it was such a revelation, all your work. And I think that was in CrossFit in California. And yeah, it was a
19
good
or
time.
20, yeah.
Excellent.
It was great.
Well, you know what we'll do, because I'm respectful, or want to be respectful of your time. We might go through, most people here in Metabolic Duo, most of the kind of members, kind of will have come across. And I gave a big talk in March 2020. Actually, I had to run out of the States because they shut the airports down. I remember. And I basically presented your hypothesis mainly, and then, you know. But after that, I got caught up in COVID, and I haven't really revisited any of that, actually. So maybe we could touch on it again, a brief summary of the outside-in hypothesis and the key bits of data in a Popperian sense, which discount the classic LDL and support your different view. And then anything you've learned in the last few years that either are pro or against evidence, either way?
Yeah, I analyzed, I made 2 analyses and published them. But, you know, it's kind of boring because I'm telling the same stuff. Nothing new. Guys, first of all, you don't read real books that present real morphology, and you still prefer to work with some kind of cartoon. It's like, you know, you watch a Disney movie about dinosaurs, and then you decided to write scientific articles about dinosaur evolution based on Walt Disney movie.
Yeah, and you're primarily referring, I guess, to the cartoonish picture of morphology that shows. Yeah, and I might, while we're speaking, I might try and get some of these slides from the past. I should have prepared this to just show them on the screen occasionally. But basically, it shows a super thin kind of intima layer.
It's one layer of cells. That's it.
Yeah. So,
in reality, it's from 25 to 30. So I guess that historically they realize that they cannot make any other depiction if they bound to this hypothesis. Because all people know that LDL supposed to crawl and accumulate under this one layer of cells. If you create 25 layers and they start to accumulate on between 24th and 30th layers, that deep, it doesn't work. So they just dump it and they pretend that it doesn't exist. So, yeah.
I recall, yeah. So, and I dug and found some other stuff. So, just for people not so familiar, the intima is around 25 or 30 layers of
Yeah,
cells.
in a coronary artery and in a muscular and major elastic artery. So it's a coronary and carotid. Because in our wrists or our feet, it could be 3 layers, 5 layers, it could be 1 layer. But we are not talking about atherosclerosis of our fingers. We are talking about coronary atherosclerosis, or in the second place, it's a carotid atherosclerosis that could form plaques and finally they rupture and you have a stroke because of this clot, but not small arteries.
Exactly, yeah. And I remember the slides, and I'll try and get them in a minute. But if you've got a baby's arteries generally before they become big and muscular, sure, the intima on the inner layer of the artery, the lumen, it is quite thin. But in the ones where we have all the troubles, like the adult heart attacks from atherosclerosis, it's 25, 30 layers in the affected arteries. So the whole industry of cholesterol always has this lie that there's only a single layer and the LDL can just get through. It's so easy.
And you know, I can understand these people, no, not understand, but retrospectively, I can see what happened. You already have a grant system, you have a financial system, you have to present your hypothesis, and this hypothesis has been in this way from 1984, 85. And it's already kind of a hypothesis that stuck to everything. If you start to change it right now and you asking money to investigate something or do something, and you already start to shake this cartridge, this boat, and all people going to look at you and say, "What are you talking about?" We all know what it is, but it's the way how we're receiving money. I don't think that they are that ignorant or that stupid. I think they know exactly what happened because it was published in a good books and in a Virtue archive. It's a main journal in a human pathology, numerous articles. So all people know about it, but the problem is that we're used to it. And at least my attempt were not strong enough to shake it up.
Well, you did more than anyone. I think there was maybe one other author, or I have a vague memory that another team may have come out with a similar paper. I'm not sure they even credited you. Like it's almost like they read your paper and then did, but I'm not sure.
It was another person, what's his name, from New Zealand, and he was a famous pathologist in artery pathology. He wrote books, and he wrote about 25 Wilmington or Steinberg. No, Steinberg is a book histology for pathologists. He presented real morphology, and Wilmington wrote like 25 articles about what happened, and his vocabulary was more stronger than mine. He just accused them in a fabrication.
Mm.
And he count how many times they substitute correct words in articles by words that not supposed to be there, that are more hazy in a definition. So, but unfortunately, this person passed away like 10 years ago. And this Japanese scientist Nakashima, who published last articles, I believe that he just gave up,
Yeah,
literally.
Nakishima, I
Yeah,
remember now because
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
leveraged his work in your oh, Nakishima, I have it here and I'll share for a moment because I think this could help people visualize. And again, for people who are not familiar, the traditional hypothesis, which has become absolute dogma, as Vladimir points out, is to assume the intima on the inner layer of the artery is just a cell or two. And therefore, the LDL can just go through it into the rest of the artery and build up, right, from the inside
yeah,
where the blood is. That's the whole
yeah,
theory. That's the $1 trillion statin industry, yada, yada, yada. And the reality, as Vladimir is pointing out, is in muscular arteries that get atherosclerosis, where it is an issue, they're around 25, 30 cells. And the science doesn't support massive LDL molecules just moving willy-nilly through 30 cell layer. Makes no sense. And we get in a moment to what would make sense. Is that sharing for people?
yeah.
There you are. And this is from the video of my talk in Denver. That's the only way I could figure I could find it. And it's frozen screen. But there you've got it. The 7-day-old A, you just got this tiny intimal layer. And by the time you get to 30-year-old, oh, there's Nakashima. Yeah, 2002, Virtual's archive. Yeah. And here is D, and the intima is bigger than the media layer. Intima is huge. That's only a 30-year-old. So how does the LDL go through this? Well, that takes a bit of fraud, I guess. What they claim, Vladimir, is the LDL goes through, but you had a series of kind of like her Dr. Popper, conflicts in the theory. So maybe we'll go through a few of the conflicts with their simplistic theory that you brought up.
I think that first a major conflict started in 1943, 45, when they uh, had this very heated debate about what is the major cause of coronary artery disease, of coronary atherosclerosis. It was two point of view. One of them was that, guys, we don't know what is the cause. And another one was, yes, we do know, and it's a LDL. And it was a joint American Heart Association and the National Institute of Health conference when they discussed this. And to everyone's surprise, it was government conference. To everyone's surprise, NIH aligned with people who thought that it's LDL, main cause of coronary artery disease. And I don't know any other cases when government participate in a scientific discussion by making decision. Because government supposed to listen, NIH listen both part, and then wait what is more convincing and have a discussion. But they decided that it's a major cause. And I believe, regardless is it true or not, it's not the way how in science we decided what happened. We still have a discussion and present our arguments. But it was done this way, unfortunately, and it was named as a consensus report. What word of consensus can mean in this context, because people were accusing another group of people of taking money, literally bribing and other people shout that you are idiots. So it was so acute and fight, but it was named consensus report, and it went through consensus report. Then I believe it was when I look at it from a pharma perspective, pharma never promised people to cure coronary atherosclerosis. Pharma promised to reduce LDL level, and they did it very sufficient. But the point is that if you reduce LDL level in a high group of risk, and it works in every single person. It has a complication, muscle pain, all other small stuff. But if you zoom out, just level LDL. Yes, statins reduce level of LDL, but you're able to protect about 25-30% from this group. About 70% of this group still contract coronary artery disease. But it's happened on a background that in 1980, from 89 to 8, within 5 years interval from 1985, American Heart Association made a numerous statements that if we can reduce LDL level to normal, we wouldn't need bypass surgery. At that time, it wasn't any stenting or balloon dilatation. It was only bypass surgery. But later they added that we reduce any kind of heart vascular procedure if we just able to reduce LDL level to normal. And now you can take single study statistics from any big center of any city, and to see how much surgeries like this, bypass surgery or stenting, they're doing by year. And it steadily increased. It didn't jump 10 times, but it steadily increased. But level of LDL in patients with a high risk steadily decreased. So we decrease LDL level, and it doesn't have any effect on a chance to contract this disease. So it happened many times in medicine. Then when we propose hypothesis, we put certain factors which we suppose should act in this situation. We made a big study. Then we analyze these results, and we start to think, guys, it's either statins doesn't work or our hypothesis doesn't work. We know that statins work, so we have our hypothesis that probably not that clear, and we have to not to revise it a little bit, but ask simple question: is it correct or not? Is that simple? But instead, I mentioned it a long time ago that one of the advocates of a high-level LDL level and statins, he made a presentation in 2018 when he discussed this this problem, why we are able to reduce LDL level but not to reduce number of disease. And he came to stunning conclusion that it's probably poor patient and doctor education. So it's a doctor who treated with the statins that they open these flyers inside and they know how much they're supposed to give every day. And patients that got this paper that said that you take these drugs and you avoid this food. So now it's they move this problem to completely shadow corner. It's a poor education. How you can operate with these definitions in a medical world, I don't know. But I mentioned this lecture. It was a Roth lecture on atherosclerosis. It's a once in a 2 years. It's a very famous lecture. It's a big award for a scientist. And they presented this conclusion.
It's a perfect example of. I just interviewed Eddie Hobbs, an Irish celebrity, an hour ago on his new book, Breaking Totalitarianism, and he brought up a very new term for me, agrogenesis, and it's basically the systemic promotion of ignorance. Hey guys, quick break from the discussion. Just to let you know, metabolicduo.com, we do sessions twice a month for subscribers. We have guests, or we go through the latest science and decode it for you, and we get Q&A from the audience, very engaging. So metabolicduo.com, and twice a month you can meet up with us and we dissect what's really going on in the world of health and nutrition. And now back to the wonderful Prof. That's been used by corporates and used by industries for, I know, forever. And this is a perfect example that the systems to retain their pride and their profits and everything else will think up anything at all to explain away the disparities and discrepancies. Anything at all will fit the purpose.
We published recently an article somehow related to the same problem. I published it with my son. He's a linguist. And I was for most of my study of arterial sclerosis. I was studying it in a transplant model because it's exactly the same. If you transplant organs, they undergo the same intimal formation. Yeah. And I realized that there is a thing that all people know. It's, there is a chronic rejection that we cannot treat, and there is acute rejection that we can treat. And there are a lot of good drugs that treat acute rejection, but not chronic rejection. And we've been doing this for 1990. And what I realized that one of the problems is that we name this pathology as a chronic rejection, but it's not rejection. But this linguistic trap, it calls linguistic relativity. When you use a language that supposed to mean certain group of event, certain class of event, and then you automatically you think within this model. You cannot step out because you're using words. It's an article, you can type it by my last name and add another my last name, but with one B, Subbotin. Because my son changed his last name, he deleted one B. He said that he preferred sounds to spelling.
I'm just putting that in the chat room there. So Subbotin and Subbotin with two B's. If you search both together for a paper. Yeah. Gotcha.
So I spent probably a year asking people, do you journal, do you interested in this point of view? Because it seems to me that the first thing that we have to do, we have to change our language. Because the people honestly believe, and I made an example from a famous linguist who created this this kind of science, linguistic relativity, that they observed a situation when people were affected more by name of things than physical nature of these things. So they can smoke freely near tank that says empty gasoline tank because it's empty. But if it's empty, it's explosive. So they would never smoke near full gasoline tank. But if you add empty gasoline tank, they would smoke. Because empty negated all danger that you put in the word empty as a gas. It's explosive. So they made numerous examples. And there are people in linguistics that are, to them, it's a known fact. But people in medicine, they so free to give emotional names or whatever comes first. Whatever comes first. Whatever you can connect. But the truth is, if you give a wrong name and it stick, and by definition of major medical societies, you cannot change this name. It's supposed to be forever, whatever we gave. But name determines how you perceive this event. And they decided to name arterial pathology that occurs like 5 to 20 years after organ transplantation. They decided to name it as a chronic rejection. We created drugs that treat rejection, but not chronic rejection. Okay, so probably whatever we name as a chronic rejection is not rejection, but again, it's a kind of major, supposed to be major shift in your head. How it could not be rejection because it's after transplant and we name it rejection. So you became slave of your words.
Yeah, and we see that all the time. That's how dogmas are created, and the use of words in propaganda is so powerful. They have all the psychologists to just to speak to your primordial brain and just to frame things such that you're limited in your thinking. It's a shocking problem. You know, I'm going to share again briefly just because I did find some of your really substantial evidence.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll just explain briefly for people. These are the same artery and of course, Professor Subbotin is a pathologist, and again over the last 15 years, I found like Dr. Joseph Kraft, who cracked the insulin assay and how big diabetes really was with a 5-hour insulin glucose assay. He was a pathologist. And my friend Garode down in Cork, who's incredible insights, he's a pathologist. And again, we come up that the pathologists, because they're people who really look deep for actual mechanisms and real scientific problem solving, they crack a lot of the bigger mysteries that the other generalists and specialists, they just, like you say, they're slaves to the dogmas. But sorry, here, guys, this is the same artery, but with different views. On the left is visual microscope, high-powered optical. Then there's staining for LDLs. I just show little black balls here, but this is the same. You can see the same artery. And then there's staining for immune cell, macrophage, and kind of disease on the right. And I think this is the first picture, Vladimir, normal intimal thickening, which is kind of normal. The intima gets thick, like you said, in people in their 30s, 40s. And then I'll see, can I scroll forward to the next step without jumping? Oh yeah, here, do you want to speak on this? Early lipid buildup. And remember guys, up here is the blood side, the lumen in each picture. And there's the intima and then the media and then the adventitia. So down here is the outside of the artery, where the muscle and the fat is. So up here is the inside, and the LDLs would supposedly be entering from the inside of the artery, where the blood is, entering into your artery inner wall. So do you want to take it from there, Vladimir?
Yeah, and but we can see that first appearance of LDL is at the deepest part of tunica intima, next to elastic membrane that are outside elastic membranes. And surprisingly, there is no macrophages in here. There is no immune cells. So it means that these cells somehow travel through all tunica intima from a lumen of an artery, and they left no traces at the top of this
Yeah.
article in here. There is no traces, and start to accumulate in here, and there is no macrophages. So
Yeah.
if you can advance next one,
Ah,
yeah,
increased.
yeah. So the time when most distinguishable lack of LDL at the beginning of tunica intima and very, I would say, dense presence of LDL in a deeper layer. What could be a rational answer to this? You cannot, for example, there is a hypothesis that they appeared everywhere, but they washed out from this area. I don't see how these simple words could be translated into a real mechanism. But
Yeah.
again, it's a deep layer and there is nothing, there is no macrophages in here. And macrophages are very important in this hypothesis participant because they transformed LDL into form that is going to stick together in artery.
Yeah.
And there is no
Foam
macrophage.
cells.
Yeah,
Yeah. So right now, at this stage of disease, it's building up in the bottom of the inner layer of the artery, the intima. It's not building up. I mean, how can it jump across here magically to the bottom through all these 35 or 40 cell layers? They're all the same cells essentially. How can it jump past? How could it wash out? It's kind of absurd. And you can see no macrophage yet, as you say. It's just LDL, but no major immune system attack. Now I'll see, can I go?
oh yeah, oh yeah. It's a dramatical picture because the maximum increase of LDL level is again in a down part, but whatever macrophages start to infiltrate, it's a top part. So
Yeah.
you cannot connect this morphological event with the macrophages.
So essentially, we've got the predominant, consistent, solid as a rock predominance of the LDL in the bottom of the intima beside the media, but the macrophage are beginning to come in potentially from the lumen, but the
Yes,
LDL didn't come in from the lumen. Now, hot mess.
yeah.
So,
This is just so clear picture that something happened not coming not from lumen but from opposite side of a lumen, because you cannot explain this picture with so dense strip of LDL presence in here. And again, you can see that a relatively small number of macrophages, because I wouldn't say that it's heavy infiltration. You still can see single cells. When it's heavy infiltrated, it's a cells only. But these few cells, they associate with a few heavy dots of LDL. But again, this presence of LDL is much, much smaller than in this area. So again, it's not coming from a lumen. It's coming from opposite side. It is only logical explanation.
yeah. And these arrowheads are the intima up here, bottom of the intima here, where it
Yeah.
joins the media, the muscular layer. So that's a dramatic picture. So to an engineer or a pathologist, you'd be the kid who says, "Hold on, the emperor's not wearing any freaking clothes
Yeah.
here,
Yeah.
guys. Look." But no one listens because there's a massive business now built on it, among other things. Oh, here's pathological with macrophage and foams. Oh, sorry, we did see that one. Yeah, we did. We went through that one. And I just noted that you had listed out a whole series of published
Yes.
papers. So that say this.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a secret with one guy, Nakashima, who maybe got the pictures wrong. Multiple papers.
In a Virchow archive, it's a major pathology journal in the world.
Yeah, that's it. Even I'm familiar with that. And there I put a picture of you in my Denver talk in March
Yeah.
2020. And I just tried to explain it for the layperson, but I think everyone here gets it. The industry has to have the LDL, and the US government had a weird consensus statement from the NIH in the 80s to force the dogma that the major cause of heart disease is LDL, and they come from the intima and invade, as Peter Attia would say, or who's his friend in Big Pharma, Gabor? The big guy?
Dayspring?
Dayspring would say, invade. They invade from the inside.
Yeah.
But it's literally comical. It's almost, like you said, cartoonish. I'll just look for other slides. You don't want to look at me. There's me in slightly slimmer in a black shirt. Oh, this one will help you visualize what you're going to tell us now about the vasa vasorum.
Yeah. It's it's not a discovery. It was described in the 60s and 70s, beginning in a modern literature, work of Glagov, that any artery with a tunica intima thickness of 20, 25, 30 layers is too thick to receive nutrients only from a lumen. There are vasa vasorum. It's a vasculature that penetrate tunica media from outside, and they end at an elastic membrane. In a normal part, this is already disease stage. At a normal part, they end in here. But if tunica intima became, instead of a normal thickness, thick like this, it undergoes phenomena that are inevitable. It's a hypoxia, lack of oxygen, and there are very well characterized hypoxia-induced growth factors that induce growth of a vasculature. It's a so well-known phenomena because they use antibody against this ischemia-induced growth factor to treat cancer, because most of cancers, they are associated with vascular growth. Tumor cannot survive unless it's applied by blood. So they use a special drug. They inject the special drug either systemically or for some diseases, for example, for macular degeneration, for eye disease. They injected into eye and they blocked growth of new vasculature. But this new vasculature is inevitable because hypoxic cells produce factor that induce vascular growth. So when it's induced vascular growth, they start to grow through elastic membranes into thickening tunica intima. Another problem is that this area of tunica intima close to membrane, it was never exposed to LDL because LDL cannot travel this way. And by separation from LDL, it's happened in many tissues. It became special area, and they start to accumulate molecules that can stick to LDL. So before these molecules in here, they were not seeing LDL at all. They can bind LDL, but it wasn't LDL at all. But as soon as vasculature start to grow from outside to this area, these molecules start to communicate, interact with LDL and just bind it. And that's why it's happened in deeper layers. It never happened in here because molecules that could bind LDL, they by, I would say, by natural selection, by evolution, they eliminated from accumulating here. It's a normal biological event.
So essentially, this is the heart of the alternative hypothesis, yours. You've got your intima that normally the vasa vasorum, or the arteries of the arteries, so little arteries that feed the thick-walled artery, they only go down to the bottom of the media from the outside. They do not go into the intima. LDL is never in the intima because it can't go in there from the lumen. There's adhesion molecule. Yeah.
Excuse my interruption. In this a little bluish layer, there are molecules that can bind LDL, but LDL would never come neither from outside nor from inside. It's never there in normal arteries. But now
Yes.
we have, yeah. Please continue. Sorry.
Oh no, that's exactly it. Yeah, LDL would never be there in a healthy or normal artery, but when you offend the intima with high insulin or high blood glucose or all the other things, if you damage the intima and it becomes inflamed and grows, gets hypoxic, it then needs some kind of sustenance because it's gotten too thick. And then the vasa vasorum eventually do something unnatural and they overextend into the intima because of the crisis. And here I think I just put a snip of your picture with the staining.
Okay, yeah.
And just showing that that's why the LDL red staining is all at the base of the intima, because the vasa vasorum are overextending due to the hypoxia of the intima because it's offended. And like you say, the adhesion molecules in here that Dayspring talks about, well, the system was never designed to see LDL here. It's pathological. So then you get adhesion and binding. But again, it's all at the bottom of the intima. So the whole Dayspring, Peter Attia cholesterol industry thing is studiously avoiding this elegant mechanism, which makes sense. And I'll ask you one last thing, Vladimir. I think you made this point and I emphasized it in Denver. When the arteries do not pass LDL, however, the tips of new arteries and the very tips of these overextending vasa vasorum are very thin at the end. And when you have very thin arterioles or these,
Permeable.
they're permeable. So the very tips down here, by their nature, are permeable to, they're fenestrated or whatever. So that's how you would get the LDL at the tips of the vasa vasorum is leaking where it should not be.
Yep. And again, we discussed at this CrossFit that, of course, if you have a high level of LDL, this event of accumulation of LDL would happen faster. But if you have a normal level of LDL, it would happen anyway. It would take probably longer time.
And the beauty is we have plenty of papers out there published that no one likes to talk about, where people with low classic LDL-C have massive issues. So that we're beset with contradictions. Low LDL, worse outcomes after a cardiac arrest. Low LDL correlating with more disease in many studies and the opposite in others. I mean, it's like all of the epidemiology and prospective epidemiological studies are all trying to tell us, guys, the LDL is all over the place as a mechanism. It's kind of crazy. Yeah, it's nuts.
Yeah, and in the opposite example, you can find 1,000 people with high level LDL and with no sign of a coronary artery disease or atherosclerosis.
Exactly. We have records there, so many. One family with 12 millimole, their
Yeah,
familial hypercholesterolemics in their 50s got scanned, three of them, and they were non-statin takers. They were up at 12 millimole, which is 360 or something, or no, more. It's nearly 450 milligrams total cholesterol, 480. And their arteries were much clearer than expected age. And one
yeah,
other guy had an LDL of, or sorry, a total cholesterol of 20 millimole, which is just got a 800 milligram total, and he had around 640 milligram LDL in the stratosphere. And he was in his late 60s. And they went in and did the full scans on him, and his arteries were amazingly good for his
yeah.
age. So many exceptions that kind of just prove the stuff we're told is BS. One other thing I remember is you pointed out, Vladimir, another key tell or a show. All of the industry that claims vasa vasorum is not the introduction, that it comes in from the lumen, they fully acknowledge after the initial initiation of atherosclerosis, all of the
Yeah,
published papers acknowledge the vasa vasorum are a massive problem, but they won't
yeah,
admit they could be the problem at the start.
yeah. Because otherwise, it makes all cholesterol idea nonsense. You still have to whatever you suggest people, you still have to do it within this hypothesis.
That's
And
it.
I believe it's a real danger because people became so in love with the hypothesis. My hypothesis is also hypothesis, and it's open to test. They can check it out. But if you have a hypothesis that no matter what your experiments shows, you just modified it a little bit because you love hypothesis. And
Yeah.
hypothesis is our educated guess how it might happen. It's supposed to be tried. And if you make a hypothesis that there is no way that it could be falsifiable, it's not a scientific hypothesis. It's a belief.
Religion. We're back to Karl
Religion.
Popper. It must
Yeah.
be falsifiable. And their hypothesis is not only falsifiable, it's so falsifiable through so many paths that it's actually comical. It's a
Yeah.
joke. That's how bad it is.
Yes.
And your hypothesis, quite the opposite. I'm still not aware of a fact that overturns your hypothesis. So you're going from 50, as Karl Popper would say, if you have one fact that goes against the hypothesis, it's over. They've got 50 against theirs or something. It's like almost no positive evidence and all negative. Your one, does it have negative evidence or some appreciable piece of contradiction against your hypothesis? I don't think I had one at the time, and I was trying to be as fair as possible.
No, not as I know. Not as I know.
Well, there you
Because
are.
yeah, because what happened, I wrote just about this. I wrote three major articles, and they received about 250 citations. That I would say pretty decent citation score. And there are articles that fully support my hypothesis, and they wrote that it's aligned with what they're finding. There are articles that are more cautious, but they still think that it's a very good explanation for all facts. So it's very parsimonian. And there is no one single article that would say, oh no, we have another facts that contradict this hypothesis.
Right. It reminds me of climate
Yeah,
change.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah,
My slide here, I put here Thomas
Yeah,
Dayspring. He's a lipidologist. I put his face in an
yeah,
Orthodox priest to show how here's what they say, that the particles magically jump across the intima
yeah,
somehow, teleporting, and end up in the bottom for the initiation step. But the Orthodox priests of cholesterol accept that for all of the progression towards coronary vascular disease and events and death, they acknowledge vasa vasorum is a massive part. And then your hypothesis makes obvious sense with all these injurious things to the intima causing hypoxia. And you agree with them on most of the progression, and they agree with you. They are just holding the fort on this initiating step. And
yeah.
quite clearly and obviously, their whole business depends on it.
Yeah, and they have another artificial, I would say, uh, morphological moment, because any plaque in a coronary artery is covered with a fibrous cup. And they wrote about fibrous cup, its instability, it can be breaking, but this is fibrous cup each time miraculously grows on the top of a plaque. But if you go to a real picture and you see that LDL start to accumulate in deep layer, and all layer on the top is already fibrous cup. It was there from the beginning. You don't have to create it, it's there. By definition of a pathological event, because it happened very deep under 25, 30 layers of cells. But then you call it fibrous cup like a new morphological event. No, it was there from the beginning.
So another demonstration. Yeah, there's so many more, and like we're nearly up in the hour, and I want to let people ask some questions. Sorry, I've been so engrossed
Okay.
and reliving
Yeah.
a wonderful pre-COVID past before all the other madness, and it's been fantastic, Vladimir. Guys or Gabor, are there any questions there in the chat? I know this is pretty heavy for people who are not familiar with it now. We're looking at morphological and pathology slides, but I'll send the link to everyone to my interview with Vladimir where we
Yeah.
go through it. Oh, Samir said, did anybody listen to Peter Attia interviewing Dayspring? Samir was screaming at the screen. Heather said, that's blown my mind. Yes, we like to blow minds. It's just a small dense LDL. Marcia mentions about small dense LDL, and the challenge I have with that is it's a massive correlate for insulin resistance, hyperinsulinemia.
Mhm.
And like the small dense LDL is like 22 or 3 nanometer, and the large healthy LDL is 25 nanometer. I mean, to an engineer, the idea that the 25, 26 nanometer particle of LDL will float and not go into your intima, but when it's down at 24,
Yeah.
that it's bad. No, it's just that your LDL particles tend to shrink if you're insulin resistant, which is what offends the
Yeah.
intima, which has caused the hypoxia and causes the neogenesis, I suppose. Neovascularized, what's the word? Neovascularite,
No,
Vascularization.
neovascularization. Yeah.
neurovascularization. Yeah, I
Yeah.
forgot the going down more wormholes on the harms of, oh, well, that's about the agnotological practices. I'm going to pick up that link later, though, because I'm working on a pack for propaganda. Marion had a recent CAC with 0 calcium. Oh, excellent. It's always a good thing. I'm not sure what your age is, and I won't ask. However, the scan showed fatty tissue against the wall. Is this initial damage showing up? Well, you know, I remember a paper sent to me by Dr. Scott Murray, a cardiologist in England, and there's a very convincing case that when you get fat building up in the muscle around the arteries, it strongly connects to atherogenesis. And it's based actually, a group of British cardiologists in my network, Vladimir, after I interviewed you, had a working group where we shared papers. And what's the name of the fat or Gabor along an artery? Perivascular fat?
Yeah,
Pericardial and epicardial.
Yeah. Well, there's this powerful support for your theory, Vladimir, because it powerfully linked to the fat
yeah,
outside the artery,
yeah,
not
yeah.
in the lumen. Yet more evidence. I'm not sure the amount of fatty tissue in your scan. You probably got the clearly new AI-driven visualization of fatty plaque versus hard plaque. Depending on your age, most of us will have some soft plaque. You know, it's hard.
Whatever is outside of a coronary artery, it's supposed to have any artery together with a vein and nerve, this bundle. They're supposed to have some fat around because it's just mechanical protection. And the same in a coronary arteries, you're supposed to have some small amount of fat. It's a normal morphology. When it exceeded normal amount, it's not good.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
And
if we start to fight cholesterol as a evil phenomenon, and we, as they suggested, reduce it as much as possible to zero, we're all dead. Because cholesterol is a molecule without which we cannot live. It's a precursor of so many important signal molecules, hormones. Hormones, but this religious idea that let's fight LDL to the zero, and the same with any morphology, unless it's a cancer cells or necrosis. It's always something happened, and very often it's a normal event.
yeah,
So
it's upside down world in a sense, but yeah, cholesterol, I mean, 25 or 4% of our body weight is our brain, and it has 25% of our body's cholesterol. I mean,
yeah,
everywhere, the
yeah,
artery sheets. It's just crucial. And the irony is as well, 80% of our cholesterol is made by our liver. And if you eat more cholesterol, the liver makes less. And if you eat less cholesterol, the liver makes more. So your
yeah,
body naturally is setting the amount of
yeah.
cholesterol. By definition, it's like absurd to think of it as a problem. Yeah. Any other questions, Gabor, or thoughts yourself for Vladimir? We've kept him very long.
Yeah, I
No,
think if the folks remember one of our previous sessions on the comparisons of the LDL hypothesis and the inflammation hypothesis, I think that virtually everything can be explained by immunological activation and the immune roles of lipoproteins, so why HDL is different in so-called atherogenic dyslipidemia, why LDL is different, how it what are these, what are the immunological roles. I think it starts making a lot more sense. And for probably the next session, I started preparing a kind of a dissection of a recent opinion piece published in the current opinion of lipidology. So it's not even secret that it's an opinion. And the author, I think, is a professor at one of the Pennsylvania University Temple or whatever. I don't remember, but it's about that we should just try to prove by running trials and providing the evidence that inflammation is the root cause of atherosclerosis. And he doesn't really mind that the similar evidence has never been provided for the LDL hypothesis, because all the evidence comes from suppressing LDL and not not trying to prove the actual hypothesis. It's just limiting LDL and then observing something. But they also forget that all these LDL suppressing drugs have side effects and effects on inflammation, effects on thrombosis. So you cannot really know what causes, if there is any benefit, what is it, what is the root cause? It's interfering with inflammation or reducing LDL. Nobody knows. So they cry for higher quality evidence for the inflammation hypothesis, for example, but they do not provide a similar quality evidence, and they haven't provided for decades. And it's not an issue, obviously. It's only an issue if you you are a supporter of a different hypothesis and you don't provide very high quality evidence. That's a problem. If they don't provide high quality evidence, that's not a problem.
Sounds like COVID for me. Hey, again, I want to respect your time. It's superb having you on, Vladimir. We're going to have to let you get back to your work.
Yeah.
Listen, let's keep in touch. It's been a long time, and it's just excellent stuff. And
thank you.
Thanks so much for coming along. Hugely enjoyable trip, memory lane, and really insightful for those not so familiar. And we have Stephen Hussey in 2 weeks' time, I believe, guys, on fourth phase of water and Pollock stuff. And is heart disease more to do with water than blood? So that should be interesting.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Vladimir.
Thank you. Thank you
very
guys.
much.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, that'll do it, folks. Great to have the professor back. And that was just one session from the other day. Metabolicduo.com. You can join up. Myself and Gabor have guests, and we go through the latest science and papers and decode them all for you. So metabolicduo.com. Great to have you on board.